the best of money matters. Wealth Tracker.
Welcome to the Wealth Tracker, where we dive into the uncharted territories of niche investment strategies that promise to redefine wealth. Hello, I'm Hongbin, Jeong. Oil might be one of the most talked about commodities in the world, from fuel prices to geopolitical tensions, but behind every barrel lies a complex, high-stakes process of discovery, drilling, and delivery. And in the Asia-Pacific, exploration is quietly shaping up to be one of the most important pieces of the region's energy and investment story. With new blocks opening, major discoveries like the recent find off India's Andaman Sea, and national oil companies steering much of the action, the race to tap the region's untapped reserves is on. But all this is happening in a time when the world is talking about renewables and the energy transition. So how do these forces collide? What does it mean for oil markets, energy security, and investor opportunities? And what should we be watching? Well, to find out more, joining me now is Prateek Pandey, who is the Senior Vice President and Head of APAC Oil and Gas Research at Rystad Energy. Prateek, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Prateek, oil is a word we hear almost every single day in news about prices, energy security, even geopolitics. But before it reaches our cars or industries, it has to be found, right? So could you walk us through the process of oil exploration and production from the very beginning so listeners can kind of, understand how oil is actually unearthed?
In simple terms, if I have to say that all the mineral rights around the world or most part of the world rest with the nation, either with the federal or with the state governments. And these rights are awarded to a set of partnership or a company individually to explore, which is what we call the exploration phase for minerals. It could be oil and gas, or it could be other minerals as well. Well, this exploration phase, we can think of it as kind of a treasure hunt where you're looking at a certain set of area, looking at a lot of geological data, working with geologists and trying to find whether there is potential or not. There's not a significant money invested in this phase yet, but only when the initial assessments reflect some promising geology, the companies go ahead and drill a well. This drilling a well is like putting a straw, and if you see the favorable results, the companies have to develop an infrastructure through which they can produce this commercially for a few decades. This development phase is the one that is most crucial because it is most capex intensive. You invest a big amount of money in this phase. And this is the one that sets up the companies to earn money or the cash flow for the decades to come. These facilities are very critical, and the development plan has to be approved by the governments as well. Once that development plan is in place and the companies undergo to construct these facilities, that is when they are in position to drill more wells and start producing. Of course, this is just the crude or gas. This still goes to the refineries to be converted into the required product that you're looking at.
Right. I think you've explained that in very simple terms for us. So how does the exploration and production scene look like right now here in Asia Pacific? Are there any notable discoveries, new blocks, or licensing rounds that investors should be watching?
Well, if we look at the last few decades, Asia has been very much a gas market. That also sits very well with the overall gas demand and hunger in the Asia, which is why there is a lot of focus on gas prospects and gas developments. If you look at Asia right now, both exploration and investments look quite strong and positive. And there are some reasons in the recent years about that, especially around the exploration. I think just 2022 and 23, both Indonesia and Malaysia were among the top countries globally for exploration success. And this was primarily the gas discoveries. That has brought a lot of focus back from international investors, from banks as well, who are looking at potential for oil and gas in this region. Following that, now the governments across region are very keen to amplify the potential in the domestic market. This is, I think, after almost a decade in the region that we are seeing all the countries offering some exploration opportunities in 2025. We have some of the countries in the region which are doing these exploration rounds after almost 15 years. So things are reviving. There are more eyes on Asia in terms of the potential for oil and gas, and that looks to be heading in the positive direction.
Well, speaking and looking towards the Asia-Pacific region, just recently, India announced a huge oil discovery off the Andaman Sea. What does this mean for the country's energy outlook then? And could it shift the regional supply and investment landscape?
Yeah, that's quite a big announcement that we have heard recently. And we have, in fact, heard something similar, not just from India, but from countries like Bangladesh, South Korea, and to an extent from Pakistan as well, about the major resource potential that lies in one of the basins in these countries. What's behind these statements is that these are just based on initial studies, and it's definitely something that's promising. But for it to be successful, there is a risk factor that comes along with it. But the size that is being looked at, even if 10% of this is really a success, you're talking about a major breakthrough for the energy security perspective for these countries. I don't think they will be looking at exporting these volumes at the initial. The focus will be more on how they can minimize the imports and the import dependence that they have, following which, with the bigger infrastructure, they will look to export. But at this point, the priority would be improving the energy security and utilizing more domestic resources for these countries.
Definitely. But I mean, exploration is expensive and prices can swing wildly. So at what oil price do these projects typically become profitable then? And how do companies hedge against downturns?
We often say in the industry these days that the era of easy oil is gone. And that itself hints you that we are no more talking about producing these barrels at $20 or $30 oil price. Most of the barrels that we see for next 5 to 6 years are dependent on a price range of about 60 or plus for the new developments that we are looking at. But post 2030, we are also looking at dependence on new barrels which would need even higher prices at about $70 to $80 per barrel, which is what pushes the companies and governments to find new resources which are possibly more economical and could be developed at a lower price as well.
Well, Prateek, now some might ask, with the global push towards renewables, why are companies still spending billions on oil exploration? How does this make sense from both an energy security and investment perspective?
No, it's a fair question. And the way I would look at it is from the lens of history. If we look at since 1800, how we have seen multiple energy transitions. We have gone from wood and biomass to coal, from coal to oil and gas, and now the discussion about the cleaner fuel or green energy. Through all the energy transitions we have seen in the past, none of them have been 100% displacement. It is always continuing to invest on the previous energy source and improve technology for the new energy sources and make them more economical. That seems to be the focus right now as well, that it's not about disrupting the oil and gas investments, but continuing those investments to make sure the supply is consistent when the world is going through this transition. Yes, the growth rate for demand of oil and gas will be impacted in the long run, but that doesn't mean we don't need oil and gas in 20, 30 or 40 years from now.
Definitely. So what are some of the unique challenges companies face then when exploring in this region, whether it's geology, regulation, infrastructure, or even geopolitics?
Well, there are a set of challenges in Asia Pacific, and I can say that over the last decade or so, specifically, the governments have really worked on the policy perspective a lot. If you look at most of the countries around in Asia, they have gone through a policy revision. They have made fiscal terms more attractive, and this is happening at the time when most other countries or most other regions are talking about imposing higher taxes on oil and gas. That's also because how dependent Asia is on the fuel, on oil and gas. So that's on a positive side. But going forward, of course, because the basins are very mature, there is a need for looking at frontier basins, lesser explored areas, which would give us bigger discoveries and long-term potential in the region. So that's something that countries are pushing for, and that's something that investors are also looking at going forward. And apart from that, I think the current geopolitical order has also pushed the governments to rethink their domestic exploitation strategy to make sure that exploring more and dependent more and more on the domestic resources, or if not within the home country, at least within the region. That is something that we see going forward as well.
Okay. Well, national oil companies, they are the major players here, right? So how much influence do they have in shaping the region's exploration scene, and how does that affect private and foreign investment opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, there used to be an era where NOCs were looked at as the mandatory partner in most of the products. We are past that era.
Okay.
They are now primarily the knowledge experts. They are exploration experts in the region, and also the technical experts. They carry a significant financial capability to develop some big projects. So their role has also changed. They are no more just joining the international players, but competing with them in terms of how they deliver the value out of the resources in these countries. So there is a significant role for NOCs going forward as well. What we see happening in the region is that NOCs are also creating a platform for international players to come in, especially through exploration, where international players are not ready to take higher risk on certain areas and projects. NOCs have gone ahead and generated higher value and then farmed out those developments. And that seems to be the model for future, to get in more international partners by creating value on these projects.
Okay, so Prateek, with countries across APAC competing for exploration dollars, who's winning that race right now, and what are they doing differently?
I would say within Asia, it continues to be some of the big countries that are still leading. It's Australia, Malaysia, and Indonesia. They are definitely at the top. Something consistent amongst all of them, especially Indonesia and Malaysia, is how they have revived the fiscal policies and how they have focused on the exploration potential. Those are two consistent factors. But I think other countries are also very keen to catch up. They are doing their best to highlight the potential that they carry.
Okay. Well, from your perspective, what should investors then be watching most closely in the next couple of months when it comes to oil exploration in APAC?
I would say 2 months is probably a very short time in energy to talk about any signals, especially from exploration perspective. There's a lot of high impact exploration that is planned from especially the international players, from the energy majors. That will definitely be the highlight. But if you ask me about possibly next 2 years, it is the frontier exploration. And that is where we see a lot of focus from the international investors and from the governments as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Prateek, for your time and your insights today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That was Prateek Pandey, who is a Senior Vice President and Head of APAC Oil and Gas Research at Rystad Energy. This has been the Wealth Tracker with me, Hongbin Jeong.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.